Hello? Can anybody hear me now? Hello? 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 Hello?
With you
Hello?
together, and just a brief summary, like what we discussed 3 years ago.
Excellent. So,
And I will also thank CBC to be involved again.
yes, tu vas être là pour nous. Oui, Julie, so it's Véronique Lavasier.
Hi.
And
Nice
so
to meet you.
Véronique
Hello?
is our doctoral program manager. She's a director of this team of about close to 50 students already.
Okay.
And this bad boy is a member of this program.
Oh, okay.
So what happened is that she will introduce us in French and English.
Okay.
And then afterwards you can say we have Julie Ayrton taking over as our host. And that's it. Julie Ayrton.
Ayrton, yeah. And will Stefan go after me then? Is that how it's gonna
Stefan, yeah. I'm not sure, Stefan, you want
Oh, before,
Okay.
before me? Okay, Veronique and then you? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, someone should say that this is live on the web, so and also it's also on YouTube Live, so that the fact the thing is here we're safe because most of the people are not here, including most of the speakers.
Hello?
It's live on YouTube.
Hello?
And
Hello?
the URL, say it is openrails.org. And the instructions to connect to it.
So if you feel Mr. Durion is connected, my phone, I believe.
I believe he was there.
Do you wish to do a voice test before we start?
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, good.
Perfect.
Pretty good.
So that's it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the sound is loud enough. Good question. Yeah, I think it's more on campus. I'm not sure exactly. Just feel that they are. On campus generally compare. But if you have time afterwards, perhaps about 20 minutes, because you will focus on the whole process. Yeah, it should be okay. For the past 20 minutes.
Okay.
So,
I can begin now? Okay. Yeah, okay. Hi everyone, dear conference participants. Oh, it's fine.
Okay, you can, okay, I can see. Okay, thank you. Pas de It's fine? Yeah, I can begin now. Good, okay, thank you. Dear conference participants, dear colleagues, dear friends, I will make an announcement in French first for formality and after in English, of course. Bienvenue à l'Université du Québec en Outaouais. Comme directrice du programme de doctorat en gestion de projet, c'est pour nous un honneur de recevoir les conférenciers d'aujourd'hui. La problématique soulevée génère d'importantes questions de recherche pour la gestion de projets de développement régionaux. Les solutions discutées aujourd'hui permettront de surmonter la complexité et l'inertie qui paralysent souvent ce type de projet. Welcome to University of Quebec in Outaouais. As a director of doctoral program in project management, it is an honor for us to welcome today's speakers. The issue addressed represent important research questions for management regional development projects. The solutions discussed today could help to overcome the complexity and inertia that frequently cripple this kind of project. Thanks for your participation and look forward to open the floor to the co-chair, Stéphane Schott, Associate Professor at the Carleton University, School of Public Policy and Administration, and also Stéphane Gagnon, Associate Professor of Information Technology Management with the Department of Business Administration at the University in Quebec in Outaouais. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Carleton University and the School of Public Policy and Administration, I would like to thank Université du Québec en Outaouais for co-hosting our first event together, and also for CBC and Julie Ayrton to continue our work together here, because this is a continuation of a workshop we had 3 years ago at Carleton University, where we first discussed this topic of regional transit and the lack of it, with an application to our area here in the Outaouais and the Ottawa area, surrounding area. And back then, 3 years ago, it was moderated by Giacomo Panico, and we had an expert panel discussing really the legal aspects of regional transit, constitutional aspects, and also the local existing railroad network that we have in this area and that is not being used. We then discussed financial aspects and an earlier version of private property finance solutions as an idea for finance of public rail. And we want to now continue this discussion in much more depth because we have a lot of experts today that Julie will introduce in a second, that have done some research on frameworks, empirical data, information sources, etc., that will be illuminating what we started to discuss 3 years ago. And I'm really looking forward to this event. It's also the first time here at the university, as well as in the form of a webinar. So thanks again for coming and listening and participating, and I hope we have a lot of good questions and discussions today.
Thank you very much, Stéphane, and thank you, Véronique. So basically, Stéphane Gagnon from University of Quebec, and I have been honored to welcome these speakers, but especially also everybody who's participating in face-to-face and online. The reason being that this topic started 3 years ago as an exploration. Now it's coming closer to a solution, isn't it? And in that sense, the discussion by our speakers will raise the question, to what extent should stakeholder consider that solution seriously? And I think that today, at least, we have a chance to draw the picture and perhaps state the main research questions that need to be addressed afterwards by other stakeholders, those who might implement the solution. So I'm looking forward to hear what our speakers have to say about this solution, and hopefully to find a way to promote it to our policymakers as well. So thank you very much. Looking forward to hear Julie on this topic too. Thank you.
Michael, check the camera's fine. Check the camera, please. Good.
They have to lower the camera for the short lady. Hi, I'm Julie Ireton. I'm a reporter with CBC. I do radio and television, and I was a business and technology reporter for quite some time. I still do business in a lot of where government and business overlap. So I'd like to welcome you all, both to the audience here at the University of Quebec and as well as our remote audience. Tonight's event is live on YouTube, and you can find it by going to the openrailproperty.org site. I'm going to introduce the speakers that we're going to have tonight. We've got some here with us, and there are some, of course, we're reaching out to remotely. And you'll each get about 15 minutes to deliver your presentation, and then we're going to have an open discussion to follow. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Deb Brazion. And he's an urban transportation economist working with the state of Tennessee. He recently completed 4 years as a postdoctoral researcher at the University Libre of Amsterdam, and his specialization is the intersection between transportation and real estate economics. And while in the Netherlands, he taught courses on spatial economic policy and transport economics. He's published some widely cited academic articles on the impact of metropolitan railway stations on residential and commercial property value, and on the effect of railway investments on land prices and land use in metropolitan areas involving multiple centers. The next we're going to hear from is Sue Zielinski, and she's going to be joining us remotely as well. And she's Managing Director of the Sustainable Mobility and Accessibility Research and Transformation Initiative, or SMART, which is a cross-university program at the University of Michigan. She and colleagues work to accelerate implementation of sustainable, integrated, multimodal, equitable, IT-enabled transportation systems. That's quite a mouthful. And to spur innovation, entrepreneurship, and industry cluster development to supply those systems. Sue advises national and international initiatives, including the World Economic Forum, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences. And prior to 2004, she co-founded and directed Moving the Economy, a City of Toronto-based think tank focused on sustainable transportation innovation and new mobility industry development. And she actually worked for 15 years for the City of Toronto's Planning Department. Robert Dorion is President, Knowledge Management Division, Research, Evaluation, and Advisory Services of the Altus Group, which is the largest and most comprehensive independent real estate advisory practice in Canada. He's going to be joining us remotely as well. Having worked for more than 25 years in the real estate consultation business, he's responsible for real estate analytics and knowledge services for financial institutions, mortgage insurers, national and local real estate boards, brokerage firms, governments, and others. Robert has specialized in defining and implementing computational systems for extracting knowledge, conducting value appraisals, and identifying sources of risk from real estate data. He has also studied the impact of new ownership modes of real estate property and their impacts on the market. He's a civil engineer and also holds an MBA specializing in land and urban economics from Université Laval. Joseph Potvin, he's here with us in the audience, or at the table, and he's an applied economist with the Ottman Company and principal author of the Property-Powered Rail Open Development Model. He chairs the Management Education Working Group of the Open Source Initiative, and he's the lead editor of the Free Libre Open Syllabus. He previously served 6 years at Treasury Board Secretariat to lead implementation of open source methods throughout Canadian government. Joseph is president of Mobility Ottawa Outaouais Systems and Enterprises to implement property-powered rail throughout Canada's National Capital Region. He served as an economist on the core drafting team for Canada's first Green Plan and has worked internationally as a contract economist to the World Bank, the IDRC, and CEDA. He studied geographical economics at Cambridge, England, and is completing a doctorate with a dissertation on multi-jurisdictional payment systems. Stéphane Gagnon is an associate professor of information technology and project management from right here at the University of Quebec. He obtained a PhD in business administration from the University of Quebec in Montreal in 2001, specializing in technology management and strategy. With a dozen graduate students, he's studying complex projects and technology architectures, addressing primarily diagnostics and simulation challenges. His interests include projects linked to semantic cloud computing, cybersecurity, financial markets, renewable energy, public finance, and open governance. And we found out tonight that we both graduated from Carleton the same year. Different programs. Stéphane Schott is a professor in the School of Public Policy and Administration at Carleton University with a PhD in Natural Resource and Environmental Economics from the University of Guelph. Since 2010, he's been the graduate supervisor for the new interdisciplinary MA in Sustainable Energy Engineering and Policy. Dr. Schott teaches graduate courses in natural resource management, environmental and ecological economics, social benefit cost analysis, energy economics, and economic theory. His research currently focuses on hydropower and ecosystem analysis, energy strategies and carbon emission reduction programs, air pollution models, sustainable development in the Arctic, and behavioral experiments in common pool resource environments. Lots of interesting stuff here, lots of important things to talk about, so I look forward to our discussions. So we'll start now with Joseph. With Geb, and he's joining us. He's in Tennessee, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I might want to mention the sound is a bit...
Okay, when we were testing earlier, the audio was a little bit shaky, so we'll see how well we're able to hear him.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Oh.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to this presentation. Today I am going to talk about the research that I did.
Gabriel, can you speak a bit closer to your microphone?
Okay. What about now? Is it okay?
Yeah, and if you speak as loud as you can, because it's quite quiet there.
Okay. So
that's good.
I'm going to talk about my research on railway development and its impact on property values. Let me try to share my screen. Okay, can you see the screen right now?
It's somewhat dark. Okay, good. Okay, go ahead, Gib.
All right. So, as you can see, my name is Gabriel Debretsion. I got my PhD in economics, urban economics, in 2006 from the University of Free University Amsterdam, and I have done some work on the railway impacts on real estate prices. Today, I'm going to talk on this research question: how are land prices for offices or houses affected by the development of multimodal transport in general and railway stations in particular? The first thing that I did when I was doing the research on the relationship of railway development and real estate prices was to do some literature and analyze the literature on the topic, and I have done some extensive statistical analysis. which was published, I think, in 2007 or so. It was a meta-analysis paper, and in that analysis, what I have done was to try to explain the results that different authors have come up in terms of the impact of railway development on real estate prices. From study to study, this may differ. That's why I have to try to explain through some econometric model called meta-analysis. So in that sense, what I found, or general result that I got, was the following. Indeed, railway development affects both house, residential properties and commercial properties, but the impact was somehow different. And the difference lays in the impact area, the extent of the impact area of commercial property places and residential property places. And the analysis shows that within a quarter-mile range of the railway station, commercial properties have higher appreciation because of the development of railway station, and that was about 12.2 more expensive compared to residential properties. But this effect on commercial property looks like short-lived because it extends to only a shorter distance from the station, and as we go along longer distances, the residential property effect dominates the impact of the railway station. In other observation from the study, we saw that railway stations are not the same, even though they are served by railway. Railways can differ in terms of their reach and services, and what we found from that research was commuter railway stations have higher positive impact on the property values as compared to light or heavy railway stations. Another observation from the study shows that accessibility by other modes like car or in highway, that means highways or freeways, also play a kind of competitive role in defining or affecting the price of real estates, in that if there is a nearby accessibility to highway from the station, the effect of the station reduces on property value. So we will be about, I will try to shed some light on that later on the location of station or where to build stations in that sense. So the issue comes to how to measure accessibility of railway station, because a station by itself is not the point of impact. What makes a station important to affect the nearby properties is the accessibility that it provides to the properties. But how do we measure accessibility as rendered by a station is an important question, and we have tried to also do some research on that, and based on our approach, we have split that definition into two parts. The first one is the station-related variables or the services related variables have to be in place, and once that are defined, we can go to the next stage to define what are the neighborhood related features, because you could have a station which is full of services in terms of frequency or no delay, or even connected to different nodes in the network. But if you don't have any or much of an access to the station by itself will not have much of an importance. So the importance of services rendered at the station has to be matched on how that station is accessed from the points of departure, or mostly from the property areas. So importance of a station depends on what kind of service that station gives, plus how easy you can reach that station. So let me show you how our model tried to come up in terms of the cumulative effect of the station. So as you can see in the figure, the importance of a station in terms of relative to this one is not a distance measure, but it is much related. It is a generalized travel or journey time, which is a composite of different items. And we see in the first in the first about 20 minutes or so from the station's importance was a climbing, or it has a kind of increasing effect, but that one saturates somewhere in the 30-minute, around 20-minute area, and start to decline. So the station, the reason why this happens is the accessibility, the areas which are very easily reached from the station enjoy the highest impact, or they increase, but the immediate ones value the negative effect of the station as well, and that's why it becomes not the optimal place to be. So the optimal place is located a little bit far to ignore the negative effect of the station, but still to enjoy the proximity to the station. And in terms of the accessibility utility that can be measured, which mode of accessibility one uses to access the station can be seen from this figure. In the first maybe about 1 kilometer from the station, someone walking would be the most selected or the preferred mode of transportation, and that is followed by biking, and later on by public transport. And as we can see, the car mode is somehow overshadowed by public transport and the other transport modes. So this is the utility between 1 kilometer up to 4.5. The bike will be the most preferred accessibility mode to a station. This case is related. I mean, this data is for the Netherlands, which may not be true for every country, because bicycle is the most important, one of the most important access modes to stations in the country. So to give you some of the empirical results that we found in our studies, we conducted a hedonic pricing analysis, and on residential properties we saw a 4% increase in price, and for the same using the same analysis, within a 500 meter from stations, commercial properties have got higher influence, that is about 18%, compared to commercial properties located 4 kilometers or away. We extended some this study, these results that I just mentioned was on existing lines and existing railway network, but there was a high-speed line that was about to be planned and implemented, and we tried also to project what would be the effect of building that additional line high speed on the properties, and we also found an increase for properties on residential and commercial properties alike, a 3% increase in property value for commercial and 5.4% increase for commercial properties was also found. So to wrap up some of the general observations, the effect of railway accessibility on residential property value is felt for a wider range of areas in the Netherlands as compared to most empirical studies originated from the US or elsewhere. Second observation that we saw in our studies, residential properties are generally influenced by the departure orientation of railway accessibility. By that I mean residential properties see a station as a departure mainly, not as a destination station. So that's why the effect size or the impact area of a station on residential is wider. But on the other hand, commercial properties tend to be influenced by the destination orientation of a railway station. As a result, the distance that commercial properties are affected by or influenced by a railway station becomes shorter. Property values respond to development projects from the announcement time in anticipation. That means when this answers the question that when does a railway development project starts to affect the prices of property values. There are studies which found that railway projects affect the price starting from the announcement. That means that speculation or that anticipation starts to derive the prices, but that adjustments in the capitalization process continue until the expected and actual services or utility that would be drawn from a station are matched. Another point that I want to mention before I conclude is financing a railway station development project by value capturing can be challenging. However, if the railway development project and real estate development in the impact area are owned by one entity, this challenge is greatly reduced. There are many studies, even though I have not studied in depth about how to capture the value appreciation from property values to finance the railway projects. There are many studies who have studied that relationship or that method of collecting, how possible method of collecting, but we can simply imagine that the appreciation, if we tax or if there is a mechanism that the local government and the property development and the project, the railway development are working in conjunction, that there could be a means to capture the value that would be appreciated because of the development of railway station to finance that development. So with that, I will finish my presentation for these 15 minutes and come back on the discussion to highlight any question that you may have. Thank you for your attention.
Better? Okay. We're good there? Sorry to people online and present, but we're doing a lot of technical marvels here that Michael Richardson is pulling together, and we haven't done all of these steps before, so running between remote people and on-site. We're good there? Michael? All good? Okay. So the normally showing, describing a business model, one can kind of do that with almost in a sense as a big blob with a logo on top. And what I want to do is just show you some of the internal mechanics of how a property-powered rail open development model could work. I want to emphasize that it is at the stage of business model R&D. We haven't done this yet, so part of the process is peer review. We've been peer reviewing it with a variety of people in different scenarios, both in the business community, business community, academic community, and governmental, and the business community both on the property side and on the transit side. So there's quite a diversity of expertise that we've been working at drawing upon. So I don't want to take the time right now to go into the rationale behind it. I want to jump straight into the mechanics, and we can discuss the rationale of it. And now, when I say mechanics, where does the money go? Where does the money come from? So three main topics here: value for money, which is to say, where does money come from? Return on investment. That's a two-way street there. Money comes in terms of capital investment and operations and so forth, and there should be return on that. And three, cost effectiveness, which is the operational expenses, money going out the door. So the first one is money coming in, the second one is two-way, and the third one is money going out. Out from what? First, value for money. I'm going to take this in stages here. There's a lot of moving parts to this. So at the very beginning, let's look at the bottom left there, land and property owners and developers. First and foremost, the way to look at this is that it's a property value optimization initiative. Transit benefits are, in this model, positive externalities. Just as pollution is a negative externality, transit is a positive externality. It happens. Sorry? Oh, what should I do here? Sorry? When I just switched it here? I just moved the... hang on a second. What's projecting now? Excuse me. Well, how do I move through my slides then? Are we good there?
Don't do anything like make it full screen. That changes the voices, that changes everything. So you need to go to the bottom wherever it does have the go back to Google. Okay. And share again. Yes. Get your slides. Don't change.
Okay, so, okay, now I see what I'll do. Okay, that's fine. Okay. I think I know what to do now. Where is the money? The money is in land and property value uplift. Now, the various empirical studies have different results, so the focus is
on property values that have greatest potential to increase by a significant amount. We segregate out here station owners. So there's land and property owners and developers, and there's station owners. They're a subset, really, but they're a special case because that's where the train will stop. And there's negotiated revenue that would come from station owners. Basically, there's a train stopping fee. Just in the same way that an individual pays to get onto transit in general, this brings the payments up to a corporate level, and there's a train stopping fee. If there's no fee paid, there's no train stopping at that station. But the empirical studies around the world show that done properly, there is a significant property value uplift within walking distance of a station. Now, so there's negotiated revenue coming in both ways here, and there's a business opportunity for station owners and a statistical increase in market value that drives the algorithm for the revenue. There's comfortable practical transportation going to travelers, but there's no arrow coming the other way. I'll address that in a later slide here. Travelers is all kinds. There's day trippers, someone going to the hospital, someone just getting around town for this and that, and there's frequent travelers such as commuters. So the focus here is on land and property, commercial residential, that can increase by at least 25% when there is a train service in a metropolitan scale stopping at around that property. Now, in terms of travelers, what we're exploring, because the money is coming from property value is maximized or optimized when it's easiest to take transit. That's with a minimum fare. There's a number of things I can say about that, but I'll just say that we're exploring a pay-what-you-want model. That might sound quite radical. It is, but there's other examples around the world. There's a literature on that with empirical data showing results of pay-what-you-want models. The focus is we really want people to take the train. That's what pushes up property values within walking distance of the stations. And people get, so pay what you want, that goes to a set of passenger experience services. Those have a license and a validation that goes with the consortium, and there's negotiated revenue that comes from the passenger experience services. I'll leave for later discussion what that means, but then there's enhanced travel experience. Down below here we have various what we call ancillary service providers, food and beverage in the stations, on the train and so forth. Packaged transportation services. For example, if someone has missed the last train, how do you get home? We can have guaranteed ride home pre-arranged with various taxi and van services and so forth. There's Virtue Car, all kinds of things that can be integrated as separate services. Keep in mind, this is not a vertically integrated monopoly. These are individual companies all conforming to a set of protocols in the consortium agreement. There's also marketable information services which can be useful there. So these ancillary services, there's a negotiated revenue to participate and a business opportunity that are provided to them. Travelers, they buy things, they get services, and they give money to the ancillary service providers. There's an additional element in here that the whole system will be, when it's operating, generates quite a lot of useful data. Some of that data would just be released as open data. Some of it requires work to put into custom form as the market may want, so there's research and planning clients that would pay for that. I'm going to go really quick, but there's the whole picture I just showed you. That is the where the money comes from. Let me jump now to return on investment, the capital, which is public capital, private capital, and community capital. First off, private sector investors and lenders. Investments and loans come into the consortium, negotiated obligations go out. Municipal and regional governments, aligned decisions. $0 comes from municipalities. This is not financed by the public sector. Okay, what does happen is that there's by running this thing, municipalities get development objectives advanced, so there's a trade. Achievement of development objectives in exchange for aligned decisions. Same thing at the federal, provincial, and state level, aligned decisions, achievement of development objectives. There certainly can be loan guarantees and grants that go from a broader level of government to a more local level of government for infrastructure, whatever, like, but it does not come to the consortium itself. There's an affinity club. General population, businesses and so forth can participate. There's a lot of things for the community to do here. So being part of the solution in exchange for some member fees. The Affinity Club would have its own existence. It would not be kind of owned and controlled by a company running the system. It would actually be a genuine community-based initiative. So there's the full picture on return on investment. There is public, private, and community capital involved. Cost effectiveness. Where does the money go? Well, there's railway right-of-ways. Sometimes these are owned in a metropolitan area all by one company, or like in Canada's national capital, there's a whole host of owners of different sections of railway. There's about 400 kilometers of railway in this region with a whole long list of different owners. In any case, rail access is governed by federal, provincial laws, depending upon, or state laws in the U.S. and so forth, depending upon a number of criteria in terms of whether it's, where does it come in as federal or provincial or state. But there's lease fees that are paid to the rail for rail access, and rail access given to the consortium. Train operators. These don't have to all be one company. There can be more than one train operator, because there can be different separate segregated lines, and you can have more than one operator on the same line. This is very normal in the railway business. You'll see that in freight all the time. There's different companies operating on the same lines. That doesn't, there's no great reason why there has to be all one company on the lines, so long as dispatch is controlled, and dispatch across multiple organizations, multiple operators is controlled, in any case, through an integrated service provider. That's always, even in Canada, outsourced. Okay. Suppliers of fuel, suppliers of wireless internet service along the whole route. These are also separate service providers. They would have an agreement with the consortium, so there's expenses are coming out from the consortium, and there's operating supplies or services that come in. Also, professional service firms. There's a variety of things that professional services can do, but basically fees are paid to professional service firms, and advice, analysis, and assistance comes from them. There's marketing services, transit analysis, engineering. There's actually can be a fairly long list of different kinds of services provided by specialized firms. Consider architects and so forth in terms of the interior of the trains, and what people would prefer, and interior stations, and any of possibilities there. To give an example, though, so here's the full operational expenses, where the money goes. There's the full picture for operating revenue and the return on investment. So altogether, these are rather complex pictures if we look at them as wholes. I've tried to step through them. Obviously, I'm going rather fast in 15 minutes, but the point being that whereas in a monopoly situation you would have an complex organizational structure providing the whole integrated structure, what this does is it breaks out, it unbundles all the business opportunities, and provides, through the consortium agreement, a means by which, a kind of a set of business protocols by which small, medium, and large enterprise can all have a part of the business. So I think I'm within time. What I'll just say is that in a broad sense, there's two contexts in which we, kind of a community, are working on this. One is the business model itself, which we're intending to be as relevant to, relevant to one metropolitan area as another, but it is specifically scaled to the metropolitan context. There's a number of assumptions that do not hold if you're trying to do full intercity and long distance, the kind of via rail scenario, and it also does not work if it's a single line. There simply isn't the catchment area to, and the kind of the usability if you've got a one line. We're also working to try to implement this in Canada's National Capital Region, which provides a number of useful complications. The fact that it's 2 different provinces, over a dozen municipalities. Obviously, Ottawa and Gatineau are the 2 largest ones, but there's a whole host of rural and semi-rural municipalities. These are all complications which, trying to do that in a unified single monopoly approach will pretty much be guaranteed to fail because there's too many jurisdictions involved. So what we're attempting to do here is provide a model that works specifically with these multiple jurisdictions. If we can make it work here, that would be great. We're trying really hard to do that, but the model itself is, all the wording in the model and the concepts are intended to be relevant literally anywhere. I'll mention as well that all of the work that we do is shareable under Creative Commons licensing, so the substance of this presentation and anything else that we're doing on the model itself is fully shareable under Creative Commons attribution license. So we're intending to do this in an open collaborative way. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joseph. And we'll see if we can get Sue up now. We tried to go to Sue earlier. There she is, Sue Zielinski. You can hear me? Let's see if we can hear you. Oh, not quite. I think you're muted. Do you have a mute button on right now, Sue? I still can't hear you.
Nothing I can do, right? I've tried that.
Hi, Sue. Can you try to? We can't hear you yet.
Let me try here. Unmute microphone. No. I think, Sue, can you hear me? You seem to be muted on your end.
We understand the shaking of the head and the nodding, but it's not going to do us very well for your presentation.
Apparently, Sue's a very good mime artist.
Okay, we'll figure this out.
Let's see.
Did you check our sound on our side?
Here together, so it's not a problem here. And here's for.
You on the phone with her? Let's see. Well, I'm showing muted here, but that would be muted. Maybe terminate her session and bring it up again.
Stu, can you hang up? We're going to try and start your session again.
Do you want us to go to Robert while you're working that out?
Right.
Okay, so give it a try.
I wish I knew some good jokes, but I can never. I'm really bad at the punchlines.
Internal CDC.
Yeah, yeah. No. So it's go by Robert.
Say again?
That's the bell as it rings her again. Those bells you heard before, we trying to get her back on, not realizing that I was causing the bell that I was seriously playing.
Nothing I can do here, right?
I think you should go on Robert.
Okay. Hopefully we'll get Sue up. We're going to go to Robert now. Robert, maybe you can give me a few words and we'll make sure that we've got you up. This is Robert Dorion.
Michael, you bringing him up? Yeah.
Robert, over there. Click on that one. Click on Robert.
Michael, Robert, can you hear us?
He was there earlier.
Yes, he was.
He kept popping up. Okay, so he's not there at all now.
Tell you what, let's let Michael do that, and we can have some audience questions right now. Yeah?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
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 Michael, okay.
While we're waiting, because we might as well have the discussion that we're here to have. Maybe I'll start out. Does anyone have any questions? We can start by asking right here in the front row.
Yeah. Repeat his questions.
Sure.
Planner and engineer, and I've always been interested in Ottawa transit, and particularly existing rail lines, so the subject matter is interesting a lot. I was interested also in the first speaker who tried to make the link between property values and railway stations. I don't necessarily agree with commuter versus heavy rail or anything like that, but the number he used that I retained was 12%. Increase in value near a railway station. And Joseph, when you started, right at the very beginning, you threw out the number 25%. And you tell us how these two relate.
Okay, I'll repeat the question as I interpreted it. So the number used in the first presentation was 12% increase in property value. Joseph was talking at about a 25% increase, so how do those two mesh?
Yeah, the numbers that Gabriel is talking about are averages. And from a planning and investment point of view for any property-powered rail initiative, what we would do is target the areas that have the greatest increase in property value. So the empirical work shows that the effects are somewhere between -5 and +40%. In terms of the numbers, how that works out is an average of, somewhere around 20, 25%, can be less than that, 15%, depending on the metropolitan area. But in terms of a planning scenario, you target where you're going to get the best bang for the buck. So let me give a scenario. Some of the worst land could be a brownfield, showing up in the markets right now as a negative value. That might actually be the best place to do a station presently. So it means that you apply for contaminated sites funding, you pull out the toxic soil, you basically rebuild the location from a real property point of view. And you certainly qualify if it's a toxic site to get contaminated sites funding. I'm giving an extreme example where you then create a new place for the station, and a site like that won't have population density around it initially. But then think back to the 1850s through to the early 1900s when they were running, when they were actually creating a lot of train systems all over North America and literally all over the world. When the tracks were running, say nationally out west or locally, say up to Maniwaki or out to Arnprior, where was the population density there when they were doing that? There wasn't, because it was property value based. So you don't go with the averages, you go with where you're going to get the best bang for the buck in the investment.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions from the audience here? Yes, in front.
I'm curious about when I'm reading from what you're telling me so far, is that we're primarily talking about a commuter operation, and as opposed to a light rail, I'm also assuming that when you're talking about the station location, and the examples that Joseph gave, Maniwaki and Arnprior, the community surrounds the station, and we're not looking at a park and ride facility, for instance. I would think that the park and ride would have a negative effect on some of the contributing sources of revenue that we saw in your slide, such as businesses in the vicinity of the station. The park and ride, I would assume, would negate some of those services.
Okay, so the question is, would park and rides negate some of the other offerings?
Give us a bit more of a definition of this station. Is this a station surrounded by community? Is it such as an Arnprior station downtown? Or is this something which is sort of out on the line and maybe the community is some distance away?
So let me give you two examples which are not the urban examples. So I can speak to urban examples, but I'll give non-urban examples. And I'll qualify this by saying I'm going to give two examples from the National Capital Region, but I'm a little bit wary to do that because this should be as relevant to Barcelona and to Johannesburg as it is to this region, but I can speak to specific examples here. So there is active business interest right now from the various companies that run golf courses outside the kind of main urban area. Why? Because a golf course that is, say, a 45-minute drive from the center of town currently has a certain expected revenue stream from people driving out. Part of that revenue stream is what you sell at the restaurant and the bar. We have a list of the golf courses in this area that actually are adjacent to the track. They have an interest directly in creating a station. What's a station? It ultimately just can be a platform with a roof on it and a bathroom and parking lot, right? But if it's so when you have a golf course currently that people have to drive to, now converted to a golf course with existing tracks that they can jump in the train to, including bring in their golf clubs right onto the train. What does that do to the business model of the golf course? Well, for one thing, it means that it's a whole lot easier to get people out to the golf course, and they're going to buy more. In fact, they can stay for 3 or 4 beers. That's okay. when you're driving, that's not okay. So let me give another example. On the line to La Pêche, there's a quarry right adjacent to the track, which has a big flat gravel area right now that we can say is underutilized from our perspective. If that big flat area, which already has gravel on it, were converted to a park and ride, you're going to have a whole catchment area, which is Masham and Alcove and Wakefield and all these areas where you can, sure you can drive into town, but you can stop there, park, and for the rest of the time going into town, you're sitting there in a comfortable train with high-speed internet service. You can start working as soon as you get onto the train, actually as soon as you're in the train station. Okay? What does that do to the land prices right there in the quarry? Now, we can give examples right in the city as well, but I mean, I think I've, the other thing I just should say is the emphasis is not commuters. The emphasis is where does the price of land benefit most when you have a metropolitan catchment area provided to that land. That land price could go up very significantly in a semi-rural and rural area, as much as it might even be better there than in an urban area. The circumstances are very diverse. We have not yet done the empirical studies on this. At this point, it's still coming up with how to structure the questions. This is why I should probably go over to Robert. It looks like he's connected, Michael?
And so is Sue, I think.
Okay, so let's, okay, Susan first. We got Susan? Okay, so on to you.
I don't...
Hi, Susan.
Hi, can you hear me?
You.
We're good.
Okay.
Oh, good.
If you can maybe speak a little bit louder, we want to hear you nice and clearly.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. You have. I'll put you on a timer here, and we'll hear from you for 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to say I'm a little decontextualized because of the technology, but I really I'm here to talk a little bit about context. I'm not an expert in the real estate, the value capture, or economics, but I focus on sustainable transportation, new mobility systems, and in particular economic opportunity and economic conversion and enterprise that's related to sustainable transportation in an urbanizing world. So Joseph invited me to speak about this in terms of how it relates to a systems approach. What I like about it is that it seems to me to be the financial manifestation of a systems approach to new mobility or the next generation to transportation, and let me show you how. So I'm just going to use this as an example. At SMART, at the University of Michigan, we have developed a platform called Mobi. And what we do is we crowdsource and connect new mobility enterprises worldwide, whether they're the kinds of services that Joseph was talking about, or information technologies, or products or infrastructures, or modes of transportation. And they form a platform so that they can work with each other B2B. So you can see here, and they're all over the world. So this provides an opportunity worldwide for all of the emerging new mobility innovations to come together with each other in a B2B way, and at the same time to tell us how the whole space is shaping. At the same time, what Mobi does is it brings in all of the different types of innovation that has been brought on by the kind of urbanization and the new culture shift with the millennials de-emphasizing auto traffic and wanting the more social networked urban community authentic life, as we heard. So when you think about this as a platform, an online platform, but a very real network, it's quite different from, well, for example, the monoculture up until this point where I now live. I'm from Toronto, but I'm now based in Ann Arbor, right next to the belly of the automotive beast in the Detroit region, in Dearborn. And that monoculture is very different from the whole enchilada of how new mobility is emerging. In other words, transportation is becoming flat across all modes of transportation. And what we have is what Joseph described around the station: more options, more connected and whole systems, seamlessly connected with the support of information technology, but very much needing a physical grounding or a physical platform for it as well. So the next generation of mobility is represented, and I think very much in the structural way that Joseph is talking about, this financial mechanism is from physical to physical plus virtual, a greater diversification and connectivity, and from a sort of a large machine or bricks and mortar only big infrastructure into a nimble network. And then you're moving from product to cluster. You're moving from bipolar decisions into a cluster of decisions or a portfolio, and you're deciding among or across rather than between. And from the policy point of view, in the new mobility world, because of the diversification, you have single policies moving into policy suites, and because information technology and all the technological advancement is happening faster than policies can be made. We're seeing more infrastructures and frameworks from a policy point of view, and fewer of the kinds of strict rules and regulations written down in tomes of legal legislation. So that is supported by this shifted mindset towards an industry opportunity, an economic opportunity, not only for regional economic competitiveness, but also for enterprise, for job creation, and for even cost savings. So this is a little bit different from the traditional approach to urban transportation. So the shift there becomes new. It goes to new integration models. How are things connecting? How do we link trains to businesses, to services, to car share, to bike share, all the disruptive new services, and even to goods movement and moving less, as we heard from the sort of telecommuting and those kinds of things. And that's supported by big data, and of course it's supported by new business and financing models. And the combination of IT and the new business and financing models means that an open system is now possible, a system that allows this cross-referencing as opposed to top-down. And this relates very much to the kinds of new decision models, not only for users between modes, but for decision makers who are able to offer a sort of a back office or an infrastructure, an architecture through which more direct interaction can happen with an overarching goal which has to do with more environmental, more social, and more economically beneficial outcomes. So why do we do this? We know why the bad parts, urbanization and climate change and congestion, but and in some ways urbanization has been the main reason why we can begin to think smarter, because there's just no way of thinking about, especially globally, the kinds of sprawling cities that would happen if everyone were to use automobiles. But what we have at the same time is great opportunities, not just sticks, but these carrots, like the big data and the information technology. And we have this cultural shift, as was already mentioned. So this begins to bring together service, technology, product design, and infrastructure, and moving people, moving goods, and moving less in ways that are cleaner, greener, safer, healthier, and more equitable. So we're through this physical platform, And through this business model platform and through this IT platform, bringing all of the systems together in a way that can be much more nimble and which can be much more creative and which can be much more inclusive. So just as a second example, another aspect of our work is to help cities around the world advance or at least implement sustainable transportation systems that are multimodal. And we have a 4-step approach to that. And what happens there is you have all of the different sectors, big business, small business, the NGOs, and all levels of government that are involved beyond purely the planning and beyond purely the economic development into the whole range of policy suites. So what excites me about this approach from a kind of a future of sustainable systems perspective is that we have the capacity finally now with the kinds of tools that are afforded to us to move forward positively and to have a much greater engagement across a wide range of sectors, which is what's absolutely necessary for the future of transportation. So my final slide is just summarizing these are really questions, because again, this isn't my area of expertise in the actual approach itself that we're talking about today, but it seems to me that this offers a platform for multiple layers to interact and benefit B2B, which is distinguished from the more traditional and bidirectional public-private partnerships or from completely financed projects with otherwise similar goals. It includes a wider range of players. It's nimble, responsive, evolutionary. It doesn't require a master plan. And it's open system, encouraging the connectivity and interoperability that the rest of sustainable transportation, and I would say cities in general, need. Is it more inclusive and equitable? Is it both short-term and long-term? I think so, but that's why we have a conversation and a discussion following these presentations. It seems to me it very much integrates economic with environmental and social returns. And finally, it supports new mobility, enterprise, employment, and industry cluster growth. So I'm going to leave you with these questions. I think I'm a little bit under the 15 minutes, but I feel that I took a lot of extra time on the technical interaction, so I'm going to leave it there.
Thanks very much, Sue. We have this love-hate relationship with this technology that allows us to go live to the web.
There?
You know, first time, so there's always glitches, and perhaps we can have your slides shared with the participants this evening. So we weren't able to see all your slides, but hopefully they can be shared. Now we're going to go to Robert or Robert. I'm not sure which you go by. We've been trying to get you up as well. Hi there.
Hello. Hello. Do you hear me? Yeah?
We can hear you. We'll probably ask you to speak a little bit louder so we can all hear you here. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you for the next 15 minutes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to position myself modestly, as opposed to the other participant and other words. I'm part of those people that try to take some research and put that into the real estate world and make it accepted and available to society in general. For a while, I thought I failed. Because it took so a while to change the environment, and I'm working for local government, municipalities, real estate boards, financial institutions, all across Canada and beyond. And I thought I failed until I met the MIT Center for Real Estate team and Professor Geltzner, namely, discussing about how long it takes to get acceptance from the market in real estate, and I was told usually it takes 15 years, and I thought it's long, so you have to start early. So in that context, Altus, which I'm an executive, I check with my Argus team, how long it took to get the discounted cash flow accepted by the investment community, and I found 15 years, which is now what it took. Hedonic modeling, which I'm going to talk briefly here, and a couple of applications we had. Indeed, and this is something I experienced personally, from the first time people from research lab in Laval enter my house on a weekend with a nice bottle of wine and an invitation to get involved into their research, to the time we deliver the house price index across Canada, and we introduce advanced modeling in the knowledge base. It took indeed a little bit less than 15 years. So my job description now is to shorten this time span so that we can get action to the market faster, and also to try to get involved not the first year, but maybe the 10th or the 9th, but usually we are a little bit adverse. I'm going to switch a couple of slides that I'm going to share with you that you can see.
And Robert, do not maximize it.
Yeah,
Just keep
okay.
it at that size, because the maximizing cuts out the other.
So this is something we shall fix. Just a minute. Boy. Well, as everybody, I'm getting some frustration with. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. So, looking at our company from the beginning was in 2002, was found by traditional practitioners, which were, we thought, among the best practitioners in each location in Canada, and we decided to have a loose kind of burner type of organization.
For a second, Michael, is there a problem with the slides? Which slide are you on, Mike, Robert?
I'm the second one.
Okay, Michael, what would you like him to do? Hit escape and go back.
Yeah.
Okay, so now stay there, and then I think when he's changing slides, he should probably click on the small slide on the left. Okay, so when you're moving to slides, click on the next slide in the small version of it on the left. Okay. You follow?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You're on the. What's showing right now is your second slide with the arrow curving up to the right. So just to do a test, click on the next slide on the left-hand side there, down below, at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how you're going to switch slides. Okay. So
okay. Good.
Slide number 2. Good. Okay.
Yeah. So just a small journey. In 2005, we found the limits of the loose organization, and we decided to move with cost, practice, and tax management, and we went public. In 2007, we start with the data. We amalgamate Insight, which was the only source of commercial data that was publicly available at that time, and we also introduced Geocom, which is more marketing research on the rental side, what drives the demand for real estate, demographic, mixed use, link that to consumer behavior, and we add geomatics, and we start having real estate data modeling products, which in 2010 was rolled out as the Canadian HPI, and then we acquire Argus, and we start servicing. Now we have 80% of the open-end funds in United States. In 2013-14, we have close to 2,000 employees in North America, Asia, Oceania, Europe, And we develop, or we're working on synthetic products, securitization of real estate, and we have cloud solutions. We're getting into the real option and risk modeling actively with our Argus platform. So this is how long it took to develop this knowledge base company in real estate. Sorry, it's in French. But briefly, here you have all the boxes. Now I was asked to talk a little bit more about our methodology, but here you have all the boxes that can influence the value: construction cost, risk, requirement, conversion of new construction, demand from the owners, on the supply side, on the renter, their demand, which is based on economic conditions. The capital market is linked to that, and the requirement from the investors to get returns. So it's all linked together. So when you're talking about want to measure a specific real estate phenomena that is linked to increased transportation or proximity factor, you have to make sure that you isolate the phenomena and that other forces that may affect the values or the market or the rents are isolated, are taken into account. So there's a lot of moving parts, and for obvious reason, it's much easier to do with residential properties than commercial properties, because the information is not as uniform. In Europe, we're finding there's much more database friendly requirements in their regulation, so that the commercial lease need to address certain issue and certain type of information is available. In North America, there's nothing more different than a rental than another one. They're all over the place with all kind of clause. So that's limit the ability that we can have. Nonetheless, we completely recently acquired RealNet, and with Insight, and sorry, there's a spelling mistake there, and Altus, we're moving as fast as we can in amalgamating and publishing commercial information. What I want to touch more specifically is the economic model we developed for Canada. It's an engine that collects information. Currently, we collect in real time 77% of the MLS transaction across the country. So we cover Victoria, Vancouver, Fraser Valley, Calgary, Saskatchewan, Ottawa, Toronto, GTA, Montreal area, Quebec City, and Moncton. And eventually we are targeting up to 95%. It's a multi-year agreement with the Canadian Real Estate Society Association and participating boards, where we collect information, we scrub it, and we run that into actually models that cover 6,500, we're close to 7,000 actually, 7,000 submarkets. So a neighborhood, property type by neighborhood is very granular. So it is as much as we could have gone into understanding the market for all type of properties that are residential across the country. And there's very aggressive use of hedonic model, and I briefly touch here with that we do a lot of spatial autocorrelation tests so that we can isolate any kind of phenomena that is spatially generated or caused, hence proximity variables to transportation or any other type of environmental variables. Of course, we cover also all the property specifics. So when you look at the model here, I have some heat maps of Vancouver area, And you can see each month we track very closely the price variation, and we can also generate the value. It's a matter of rights and agreements that we're working on actually. But you can see that we can get quite granular, and interestingly enough, the yellow and orange area here is the one that has been, is the area that has been affected by the latest expansion of the SkyTrain. So without getting into the specific, you can see that there's we can capture with this model influences of improving transportation mode. Its impact on the market is measured. Another slide here is, on this one is on the South Shore of Montreal. We isolate all the property-specific variables so that we can capture only the location of the location variable, that we combine into one variable. And you can see here there's a lot of positive impact around the subway station in Longueuil. That way we think it's a subway station actually. We have to test it further. So nonetheless, there's a lot of research, analysis, and that we can do with this Canada-wide platform that is working actually. Just a matter of getting the industry ready to give access to it, but that's not our job. Our job is to support what we are asked to do. So okay, so that's basically what I want to touch base with you. Of course, we have also applied these model and these techniques that many of you must know, I imagine, with municipalities. We work for municipalities around Montreal, Trois-Rivières, Saguenay, in Quebec City, our own municipalities that we service, Altus. So this is certainly my last word on that regard is there's a lot of application that can be developed if public services and municipalities are more aware of the value of their data, especially the one that they collect for assessment. So we're a strong proponent at Altus to support initiatives that are going to leverage and enhance the value of public data beyond what they are traditionally used, which is assessment, but more toward supporting, I imagine, sustainable policies like the one that Mr. Potvin is working on. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Robert. And thanks very much for our speakers, both remotely and here in the room with us. And especially throughout all the technical glitches that we've had tonight. It's great that you've all been so patient. I'm going to invite Stéphane Gagnon and Stéphane Schott each to come up to get our discussion going, because I know we still have some questions from here in the audience of the speakers today.
This one, yeah? Yeah. Thanks for very good background presentations. Very interesting. I think we've seen a lot of discussion on what contributes to property values, commercial versus residential, appreciation, interest that might be different between commercial and residential properties. I think Gebra was mentioning also a bit of a problem of value capturing. Like, how do you really capture the value? It can be challenging, I think Gebra mentioned, unless railway development projects and real estate developments are owned by the same entity. And of course, As much as I see some opportunities here, and especially since we often are short of public funds to really get things going, it's a great opportunity, I think. But I also like to raise these some questions from my public administration hat, where I say, okay, where does the regulator come in? If we leave these systems or these real property appreciation systems take its role or evolve, as Susan Zielinski was talking about, will they evolve in the right way? And coming back to Robert Dorian's point, will the right information be available? Will we have access to information to identify where the best choices are of developing? Where do we know where railway developers would go? What land will be developed first? And is this really where urban development wants to go? So I'm going to throw this out to hopefully have some discussion on that, from some feedback from the speakers, but also more questions from the audience. Also from our actually online audience, if they have some questions. Okay, thanks.
Like Stefan, I'd like to thank our speakers because they've said pretty much different facets. They've spoken about different facets of the problem, and also are coming close to a question as to what kind of solution is feasible. Stefan just spoke about the issue of finding out how such an emerging network can spring out. Literally, where are the stations going to be located, and how do they come up into a coherent architecture? From my perspective, since I'm very concerned about the modeling aspect, I'm very concerned about which method can we actually use to answer the question that Stefan just made. And what I've come up with so far is that we may need to develop what we call an agent simulation system. This is a type of system that is very, I would say, emerging, and it's still research and development. But literally, it's been used in some urban planning efforts. One of the most famous is in Zurich, where the agent simulation systems are programmed to represent, obviously, the population, the ecosystem, obviously the economic interests, as well as the transportation modes. Given a certain set of conditions that are realistic, the system can then develop towards different types of convergence nodes. And there we can at least answer one of the questions that Stefan is posing, is as to how the network sprung out. The other facet is how does we would call investor behavior affect the whole network. Because we're talking about open markets, we're talking about unpredictable behavior, obviously. We're talking about speculative bubbles, obviously, right away. We're talking about regulators perhaps vying for greater revenue shares of the whole thing. We never know. Especially, we never know that politics might change the whole nature of the open market. All those questions are yet to be answered. And I open the door to you tonight and figure out to what extent that discussion is very far down the road or very close to reality, and to what extent it might be feasible to interest public policy and especially local development agencies in those set of questions. So I leave you to answer those questions too. Thank you.
You mean the people? Okay. So among Robert and Susan, do you have any comments to what Stefan and Stefan have brought up here? Yeah. Oh, can we? Is that a no, or maybe we don't have you?
Yeah, Susan?
Susan, okay. Can you click on your microphone? Oh, sorry.
Okay.
And it came, I came pre-muted this time. So now, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I was saying that I really love that, that set of comments, because I realized that perhaps how I had expressed the opportunity, because I'm a planner, I have high value for the role of government and policy in matters of achieving what we want to achieve. And so in some sense, I suppose when I think about how the opportunity may exist for a stronger role in government in laying out the principles for how what principles we are trying to achieve, in that way bringing in a much greater effort and requiring such an effort by businesses. So in some sense, government has the opportunity to say, these are the bottom line principles that need to be addressed. And we think that together you can perhaps achieve more than what we could even achieve in policy by working together in a certain way. So that's not to say that there's no role for top-down, but the top-down is perhaps defining a certain set of goals and principles rather than every single rule and regulation. I don't know if that addresses the question. I just as an example, the Toronto official plan, that was very controversial, but there was a situation in which a city planner, Paul Bedford at the time, had said, well, you know, we need to have fewer sort of zoning regulations and very, very detailed regulations, and have areas of the city where a set of principles means that the private and public aren't just having public-private partnerships, but they're having public-private innovation. They're meant to work together to solve the challenge, as opposed to fighting with each other to get each what they want more of.
Okay, thank you. Robert, did you want to have opportunity to comment? Can you unmute him?
Hang on a second, Robert. Tell him.
We're just trying to get you your audio up, Robert.
Does he need to click something there, Michael?
Right here, down there.
No?
Robert, could it be that you're muted? On your computer, that you have it on mute?
Okay, do you hear me?
There you go.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. You know, as I try to briefly touch on my my initial presentation, is that all the real estate market and all people that are involved in that market are not necessarily, and I don't want to be quotey here, but I would say they may be intimidated by new techniques. I certainly found that true for hedonic models when I tried to apply it and show all the nice thing it can do to understand and track values. As I used to say, not find the what, but find the why. You know, the end result was either the brokers, the investors, the appraiser, and my own employees or partners were intimidated by technology that can affect their career. And this is true for everything. In public service, I found a lot of resistance when you try to introduce technologies. And I found my way through by finding out something different, which was measuring the influence of value over time, which was an index, as opposed to finding the value. I think you need from all the excitement of the new concept and the new vision that you can have from the research lab, which I hope you will continue to have this creativity and ingenuity. You need also to find how can I sell that or push that into the market. So what the Chinese always used to tell me when I was working there is stepping stones. What are the first step that is easy, digestible, and that people will get into because it's a small improvement to what they're doing, but it's not too much of a revolution. So this stepping stone, pragmatic, patient approach is frankly in real estate or even local government the only thing that really works.
Okay, thank you. I think this is all about stepping stones, isn't it?
Yeah.
Finding out which the next step is. Geb, we haven't heard from you since the way back at the beginning. I'll give you an opportunity to comment as well. And you need to be unmuted as well, because we cannot hear you. Geb, can you hear me? Because we're not able to hear you. If you could take yourself off of your computer off mute. No, we still can't hear you.
Here we go. Is that you?
That was me. I'm afraid we can't hear you. Do you have a mute button that you can push? Or unpush? Okay. Yeah. Well, why don't we go to the audience here in the room and ask questions?
Perhaps I'll just respond to that.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to take the floor first? Okay, Joseph is going to stand up here.
So I'll just comment on a couple of. A second. Regarding the regulations and the urban planning and actually regional planning in terms of where things go, I guess the first thing I'd like to point out from a historical development point of view is a great many of our urban and urban areas and semi-rural towns throughout the continent are where they are today because that's where they were placed by the property-powered railway developments of the 1850s through to the early 1900s. So that question was, that issue about where stations go was driven by property value optimization at that time. The way that CN and CP were granted rights of way, the government gave them commissions on the basis of their commitment to do developments, and it was up to the companies, CN and CP, where they were going to build their stations and then where those towns were going to be. That has some downsides, but as a general concept, planners need to ask, is that so bad? Is it so bad to have the, where the money comes from drive where transit goes and then where development goes around that? Definitely, as with everything, yes, it has problems. Now, in the particular model that we're looking at here, an open market development model, keep in mind that no station gets building permits unless it's conforming with the municipal master plan. So, in as much as investors will have an interest in a particular area, that interest is a latent interest until they've got approvals from their municipality. And then all of the normal back and forth between developers and municipalities won't really change. That'll still be a hard-fought battle every single place it happens. It is today. That won't change. So it's just, but it does actually change matters in the following way. Los Angeles has redeveloped and rebuilt an entire metropolitan network based on a general tax right across all of the people of not just Los Angeles, but the whole metropolitan area. What this does is it focuses the money for the transit system on the property interests that benefit most. In the case of the Los Angeles region, the gains, the uplift in property value is a windfall gain for those property owners, and they're not, I mean, they keep it all. I mean, there's a tax issue, and obviously that's good for the municipality and so forth, but it's just a different way of distributing the gains in the property that this addresses.
Some questions here. Chris, is that you? Okay, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I think it just builds on some of the comments there, because that was one of the things I was struggling with in my head, is how you reconcile planned growth with emergent growth. Now, it seems to me, you know, the old saying, if we build it, they will come. This is a little bit like, if they come, we will build it, sort of thing. It turns it on its head. But it seems to me that governments may not want to take a heavy hand and certainly be putting money into this, as you pointed out, but they do have that power to obviously rezone, and rezone, and they will come, they being the developers. So I think the government can send out clear signals as to where it wants investment. And of course, we know that the land values will increase exponentially once there's some rezoning of land that previously they were not able to build on. And in that way, you can reconcile the private sector interest to some extent with what the municipal or regional government interests are as well, in terms of where it wants that development to take place along the lines, which actually are already in place. You know that, at least in Ottawa.
That was you had a comment. Do you have a question attached to that as well?
Well, I think it's contained in there, but essentially it's more of a trying to offer a solution to, I think, several of the comments are driving at the same problem here. Because if we let it go organically, somebody's got to be first in order to build a station, but do you want to be the first one into the market when you're not sure if other stations will crop up, if this is a train to anywhere, and have you thereby wasted your investment in that particular station? Obviously, we can't have them all built at the same time, but that's the role that governments take. In terms of, say, our light rail in Ottawa now, we know where the stations are going to be, and we know where phase 2 is going to go to, and that's pretty much guaranteed. So I think investors do need to know, to some extent, where the stations are going to be, before they will invest. So I think there has to be a balance, and I think we have the tools to balance both the private sector and the regional transportation needs. So it's really a comment, but it's trying to sort of take the conversation a little bit further.
And are you also talking about, going back to, as Sue was talking about, the official plan, making these initiatives part of the official plan?
Well, yeah, I think they have to be, because if you're talking about a model on the scale of the Ottawa, Quebec, Gatineau model, it covers a huge area in 2 provinces, and it would be crazy not to include that into your growth plans. And frankly, we have the advantage in Ottawa of already knowing where these existing lines are. So it wouldn't be a stretch, therefore, to plan a little bit where we would like growth to take place along those lines. And obviously, what the first presentation was talking about was accessibility to those places. So I think it has to be incorporated into the growth plans.
And when you are talking about the national capital region, you're talking about so many different levels of government, which Joseph alluded to, as well as, you know, 2 municipalities, if you want to start there, with 2 different official plans. I don't know, Joseph, if you want to comment on that.
So it actually is a really interesting question from a political science point of view and a governance point of view. It's actually very, who commented, oh yeah, it was Robert who commented that the Chinese were advising against revolutions. But it's, in a decision-making process, you need to there's a requirement to decide where it makes sense to have central planning, which is municipal planning and provincial planning and so forth, and where it's appropriate to have the interplay of I'll call it a policy-bounded or policy-driven open market. So we're not talking anything goes, but the role of government in this model is to establish the regulations and to enforce the regulations consistently, to establish general policy directions, but let the market, within bounds, do what the market does best. If the central planners decide that a station has to go here, they've preempted the dynamism that is the market. And I don't think that that the track record of that kind of spatial positioning is a stellar success. Just ask people in many communities in Canada's Arctic if they really like where the central planners placed their communities without taking account of hunting and water access and that. And I don't mean to bash the public sector as such, but the mechanism by which the consortium, and keep in mind, we're looking at, in any case, it's a consortium within a whole metropolitan area that then reaches a critical mass of consortium members, does their analysis, the kind that Robert was talking about, saying, where can we make most money in this whole business? Right there. Well, where is that in relation to the existing development master plan? Well, it may have anticipated that that's a good place to have a station, or it might have not have considered that at all. But then that's a discussion for the developers and the municipality, and see if there's some exceptions or variances or changes to the master plan next time it comes up for renewal. So it actually reintroduces that kind of dynamism from 100 years ago.
Did we lose our signal? Did we lose our signal or something? No? Okay, we just don't have anybody up on the screen. Okay, there are other
there we go.
There are other questions from the audience here, so I'll go down here.
I'd like to speak a bit on behalf of central planners. I'm visiting from the federal government, one of the larger central planners around. I think I'd like to make the connection back to Robert's point of the stepping stone. And I understand and I actually like the concept of developing the consortium in the market. I think you have to get a consortium of the planning elements. And that is a must. Because without that consortium of the planning elements coming together and actually understanding the model and understanding how the model generates value for the municipalities, because I think that's at the heart of it. The return to government, all those lines that you drew on your model that were coming back to government, but not necessarily costed or priced, have value for the municipality. And also, growth has value for the municipalities and the province and the feds and so on. I think that's probably one of the things that should be considered when you look at actually further developing the model, is bringing in a consortium of those developers, of those decision makers, not at the political level, but at the planning level. Because it may take 15 years, as Robert was telling us, but we may be further along in that path than you think. In terms of, we may be at year 10, we may be at year 7, could be at year 12, who knows? But you've got to bring them together, and there has to be this joint education process across this market that you're talking about from inside the planning method.
Either of the Stephans have a comment on that one?
Well, I mean, I totally, right? I mean, I like to give it to them more questions from the audience, so I don't want to comment too long, because I want to hear from other people in the audience, because there's now a really stimulating discussion. I think there's a new model of public-private partnership that we're talking about, and I agree that there has to be some kind of planning consortium, but the problem is that there seems to be a market failure here. On one hand, the public regulators cannot capture the rents, the appreciations. And what Robert was talking about, Robert, about hedonic attributes that you're trying to figure out, I mean, frankly, we could have long done that with property taxation and saying, okay, this house is closer to a railway station, has to have a higher property tax than that house. Yeah. But they're not doing that. We don't need a private market for that. No. In fact, you know, I've disputed my own property tax assessment by saying, hey, where's your hedonic model? I don't have the view like my neighbor used to. You assess the same value. So, I mean, I think that's something where there's a market failure. So somehow the public is not capturing this and investing it into what they should invest in, its public transit infrastructure. But on the other hand, we're not trusting the private sector, or we need to regulate it somehow, or have a starting point with a couple of railway stations, and then let the model evolve from that. But somehow nothing is happening. And why is that failure happening? I think that's something that we need to flesh out. But I like to hear from others in the audience.
Look at the hands. Everyone has to. Okay, the man in the blue shirt.
Make sure you repeat the question.
Bonsoir. I'm a student at Carleton University. I actually came back from Professor Schott's class earlier today. And I mean, I have two questions. First one is perhaps a little simplistic, but I have to ask. I was riding my bike from the old train to come to UQO. I couldn't help it thinking, should I be riding a train that then goes to the river on that nice bridge that is not being used, and could a station be built right beside the university? So is this new concept allowing that to happen in the medium to long term? And second question, and it's in line with what Professor Schott was saying. I once attended a very inspiring presentation about Curitiba, Brazil, where they have all this urban planning in collaboration with developer, and they decide where they're going to put residential, new development, they decide where they're going to put commercial, and they have all of that central planning in collaboration with the private market, and they decide where they're going to have parks, so here's your hedonic attributes, and it seems all to be working. So what have they found in Brazil, in Curitiba, that we haven't found here in Ottawa?
Okay, just in case you obviously can't see, that was a question from a student in the audience, a Carleton University student, riding along the O train, wondering if a trans-provincial route, I guess, is part of the overall plan. I know that's something that Joseph has talked about, so maybe we'll attack that question first.
So I expect that some of the others have something to say, but I'll address that in particular for this region because the other speakers are not from this region. But I'd like to tie together in the response three things that have just been mentioned. One is the economic development just generally. Two is the idea of market failure and the role of central planning. And three, the bridge. Let me start with the bridge. The O train, when it was initiated in the year 2000, applied for a certificate of fitness to the Canadian Transportation Agency, and that certificate of fitness included a plan to run the O train from semi-South Ottawa through to the Gatineau Airport. Today, the certificate of fitness for the O train continues to be approved on the basis of running through to the Gatineau Airport. Why doesn't it? Why does it stop over there? Why could you not take the train to the station and you kick a soccer ball from here to hit the track? Okay. The reason is best given by someone who I'm not going to give any hints about where they work. Okay. I don't want to incriminate anybody here, but the reason why is because it actually serves the with the economic interests within the city boundaries of Ottawa to have good transit within the city boundaries and lousy transit connections beyond those city boundaries. Making it easy to get across to Gatineau and to get back from Gatineau or any of the other municipalities into Ottawa makes it easy for people to live here out in the north of the river, makes it easy for businesses to base here, and that is perceived in a narrow sense, okay, in a kind of, optimizing for the part and not for the whole, that is perceived as cutting into the tax base, cutting into the jobs base of a single city. There is only one entity in this region that has a mandate for the whole region, which is the National Capital Commission. So I can stop there because I could talk for 3 hours on that. But in the case of, there are cases of market failure. What we have here, and as a researcher, this is an extremely interesting region to try this concept out in. What we have here is a central planner failure. That happens too. Right? So there's market failures, there's central planner failures, there's market successes, there's central planning successes. Somewhere we need to rebalance what's going on, because in this region, as an example of so many regions elsewhere, we have an existing circulatory system that is very sick. I just ask anybody coming in from Highway 50, Highway 7, 416, you name it, it's really hard to move around at rush hour around here, and very hard to, at various times to get around the region in an efficient way, right?
Who couldn't talk about the NCC for 3 hours? You had a second question, though, and that was about Brazil and what could be found in modeling. Case studies. Yeah, case studies. Anybody?
Yeah, perhaps Robert?
Robert, is that something that you could talk to, Brazil as a case study as a model?
Unfortunately, I've not been to Brazil, so I cannot talk specifically about Brazil. But if listening to the nice comments that I heard over the last minute, there's a couple of ideas that struck my mind. First of all, we didn't introduce into those discussions the cost carbon-wise to adopt city pattern development regarding another one. But with the rapidity, with the climate change, and the concern that I can see from their younger generation, I can certainly testify my kids are, those costs are going to be part of their preoccupation. So they will add to the cost of traveling, commuting, etc. And they will have an impact on the future need of the people. Actually, the trend that we're monitoring across Canada from our model is what we call the walkability index. Proximity to services is a huge driver for new developments and new concept in real estate. And if you look at the SkyTrain that has been built in the 80s, what happened around those stations is speak loud about what people are looking in the future. They're looking to walk for their grocery, to walk to work. They're looking to reduce their carbon footprint. That certainly, I think, I talked to, I run into Stéphane Dion last week when I was commuting in Montreal in the airport, and I've been to school with him. So we used to take the bus together. when we were teenage. And he's telling me how, in his view from a political perspective, our city failed to meet the carbon challenge in Quebec. We were talking about Quebec City. Quebec City is a good example. Here you have one of the nicest city, old city, not only the old Quebec, but what has been built in the 30s and around tramway station, actually, the 30s and the 40s. And how much we fail in the 90s and 80s. We have urban sprawl. It took me an hour to get to where I am, actually, in the suburb. We got it right first, but we failed in the recent decade. And when we're looking about the future, what people are looking, walkability, public transport, and everything, strangely, in Montreal, in Toronto, all over the place, it's the same in Quebec. What the old cities are the best part that are built to cope with the future needs and future requirements. Strangely, everything we have done in the middle is going to be a challenge in a demographic declining society where people are looking for obviously what we're talking about. I wonder sometime about the suburbs.
I know we have several more questions from the audience right here in front.
My frustration level is rising because you're nibbling around the edges, and each one of these questions as they come up, you're getting closer. And I suggest to you that before you start worrying about the station and the color of the roof, that the first thing you have to do is you have to preserve the rail right-of-way. You have to preserve the rail right-of-way, or you've got nothing. It doesn't make any difference where you want to put the station. And if you think where the rail rights-of-way are at the moment, and the ones where the rails have been lifted, that's where the communities are. They're already built. You mentioned that earlier on. You know, so then it's a matter of going and hassling with them whether they want a station on this new line or not, if they're prepared to pay, and if they're not, well. But look at what we have here on this side of the river. You know, that we had 2 rail lines going up the Pontiac. I mean, we've got now Hull, Aylmer, Lustville, Couillon, Shawville. You know, all of that is gone. And if you don't preserve that to start with, then forget about all the rest of this. One of the biggest enemies that you have, well, there's a couple. One, what about Highway 50 here? Highway 50 gets people to move out of town, all right? Now, that's fine if you don't have Highway 50, you have the rail line. And in fact, you have the rail line going along the north side of the river. Underutilized, and you know, if we don't hang on to it, it's going to be gone in a flash. On the Ontario side, you've got Highway 416. I spent some time in the Queensway Carleton Hospital. Half the staff there lives down in Kemptville, you know. But there's a rail line, or there's a part of a rail line that goes down there. You know, unless we hang on to that, that's the first move. Then you can worry about whether we've got the stations. The communities are already along those lines, but if you don't have the line, so the 2 things you have to do, first off, you have to preserve the rail lines that are in existence at the moment. 2, you got to convince the various governments that are broke that you can't keep building 4-lane highways, because on the Ontario side, it's now easy to live in Armprior and Carleton Place because 4 lanes go out there, and it's going to go to Renfrew before we're finished. You know, so people an hour away drive out to Renfrew. So then what happens? They bring their car in and they park in the park and ride, and so the STO and OC Transpo have to provide transit service and provide the lot for the park and ride. So that's where you start. And then, as I say, the communities are already there along those rail lines. You pointed out earlier that that the railways, in fact, in their planning, went ahead with this. One of the other things, and I don't want to, maybe I should make a run for the door, is the cycles. You know, look at the Quebec or the Hall Wakefield steam train. Somebody wants to turn it into a hiking trail. You know, the Carleton Place sub is a trail. A good part of the Prescott sub is a trail. Once the track's gone, it's gone.
I don't think you should head for the door. I think in many ways you're preaching to the converted here, because I've heard some of the theories. But I think maybe what your question I'd pull out of all this is how do we preserve the rail lines? Because as you say, they've pulled up tracks across the country. I grew up in Kemptville, and I was at home a few weeks ago, and they've just pulled up a whole lot of rail lines there already. So I don't know who wants to take that question. I know somebody that's been talking about rail, and that's you, between... Okay, so, okay, well, hold your thoughts on that one. I'll take another question, and go ahead.
I don't know why the group of illustrious researchers here shies away from mentioning the politicians. There's an election coming up in this region, and we all know that the people who are going to get elected, at least near the top, are not in favor or do not have the vision that you have been explaining here with great emphasis and justice, of course. So the gap is between the academic knowledge and the politicians who may be working with the developers. I don't know, I'm not insinuating, but there is a gap and we don't manage, and we have the representative of public administration here. Why can't we manage this gap? And one last remark, distinct from that, is the NCC. I have the NCC in high regard. I know I may be the only one in the room, but we've got to support it because we have it before it gets obliterated like another C-ending organization.
Okay, so there's two issues there. And Sue, I'm wondering if you want to comment. One was we were talking about how to preserve the rail lines, and that's an issue across North America. And then, of course, the role of the politicians here.
This is just wonderful conversation, and can you hear me okay?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
You made me think about the work that we do in different cities is a real not rocket science thing, and it kind of evolved because we had to get an inventory of what already was there. So in relation to preserving the rail lines, it's such a great example of realizing, you know, it's already there, the communities are already there, why are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Why are we, you know, throwing away something that's useful? And the work that we initially did was very straightforward and practical in terms of mapping out, okay, well, where are all the subways, where are all the BRTs, where are all the highways, the parking lots, the car share, the bike share, overlaying all of them, and where two or more things connect, you put a red dot, and suddenly you have the multimodal new mobility grid there. And in some cases, they're at big stations. And in some cases, they're just a connection between perhaps a parking lot and a bus stop. And this is something that says, okay, we have this opportunity to build on what's there, but we can't do that unless we've seen what's there. So what we had already been doing is bringing together the key politicians. And again, I don't think that all politicians are cut from the same cloth, just like all business people, all entrepreneurs are not cut from the same cloths. So I think dividing out by category or sector isn't maybe going to be as effective as doing both, dividing out by sector and dividing out by where people are at on the issue. So when you have everyone around the table looking at the same map, saying, okay, the issue here is the connectivity. It's the person who's going from door to door, from A to B. How are they going to move from this subway through to that bike share, through to that car share in a seamless way? How are they going to use information technologies to do that? In this way, we're seeing already what the infrastructure is and what the connection points are between those different things. And we say, well, actually, that makes sense to keep that. And then we begin to see the gaps. So I think in terms of how we move forward, the comments about how we have to have these conversations are so important. We've done this work in Delhi, Manila, Washington, D.C., Portland, Los Angeles, and in almost every case, there are people who have been working in the same city, in the same region, with the same goals, and maybe at a slightly different level of government or in a different industry sector, and they haven't actually met each other, and they find out they do agree. So this then comes to the idea of, well, where does policy have to be strong? Where does government have to be strong? And where can it be free? Well, if you have situations where some things are already working, and situations where it's not going to change much if you actually allow the interactive economic development side of things, you have an opportunity to really zero in on the contentious issues. Because in so many cases, most of the leaders, when we did this in Washington, D.C., the head of transit said, you know, I had no idea so many of my bus stops already connect with zip cars. The zip cars are right there. And then the head of IT, who then became one of the heads of IT in the Obama administration, he said, you know, we've got this great IT system for our transit, but we could be linking that with the taxis and the other services like car share, bike share. So then you've got these things that are no-brainers. You've got things that the process itself is the preamble to really strict stick policies. And what you have instead of public-private partnership is a much earlier stage of public-private innovation. So how we're working at this is to say, we're going to get together and we're going to see what the challenge is. We're going to agree that, well, we all want our kids to live and have environmental and social safety and quality of life, and we all want a really fantastic economy because the two are intimately linked. So how are we going to get together on this across sectors? Then we identify what can be done, some of the really great creative things that in fact spark new businesses, new opportunities, things that a politician may never have thought of, but would be really excited about in terms of a technological solution. So I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna in this, but I've seen it happen now 20 times in a formal setting with all the leaders there going, oh, yeah, never thought of that. That's going to save me a lot of money. That's going to mean I'm not going to build a BRT right over top of the subway. And you think that these things have been thought out, but they haven't. And each time, you know, each time I go to another city, I think, oh, maybe it's not going to work this time, because it's a real leap of faith to bring these people together and say we're gonna work on this together, and we've got to have you really, you know, go for it here. And each time I say, you know, it's not only Toronto that's like this. It's every city, and that work of and I think that kind of work, if we strike the balance that someone mentioned earlier, that kind of work is what Joseph is talking about, by creating this platform, that it has to be done in a very concerted way and a conscious way in order to meet those clear goals. And the clear goals that are big goals can be the role of government, not only the little tiny rules and regulations.
It sounds to me like it needs some champions in the government to make it happen. And of course, we have in Ontario municipal elections going on right now, campaigns, and various groups, environmental groups and cycling groups and others are sending out questionnaires to municipal politicians. Perhaps this is another questionnaire that should go out to all the politicians in the municipal election to find out where they stand on this kind of thing. I won't do the story, but I'll pass it on to one of my colleagues. So there's a question right at the very back.
But before another question, I just want to,
Sorry.
if I could just comment on the politicians and preserving railways. Just imagine for a moment this region, and I'll say to the other speakers, imagine your region, because the story was pretty similar all over the world. Imagine, I'll speak of the details of this region. Imagine within this region an electric railway system run by the private sector throughout Ottawa, connecting all the major neighborhoods, through Gatineau, Hull at the time, connecting all the major neighborhoods, running rolling stock that's built locally, designed and built, manufactured locally. There's electric cars and there's hybrid natural gas and electric. All of that existed. It was carrying 30 million fares a year. It was taken out in the 50s and 60s under the Gribert Plan. There's an entire chapter in the Gribert Plan about eliminating railways from the core of Ottawa-Gatineau from here into the future. That plan has never been revoked officially. Well, it sort of has, because there was an interprovincial transit strategy released a year ago. In any case, there is, actually I should say that when the Ottawa Electric Railway got started, at the very beginning, it was opposed by the city. Okay, so there's issues with the politicians. In terms of preserving railways, I'm of the view that the only way to maintain a railway corridor is to run trains profitably on it. There isn't any other way.
Okay, so we'll take the question at the back.
A little bit of a common observation. As Stefan mentioned, governments don't have money these days. There are tools for governments to engage the private sector to basically fund through bonds local improvement charges. I'm sort of curious how the local improvement charge might be applied to this situation, where the private developer who may own a station is going to get essentially a windfall profit through that location. I've seen developers in Toronto who own office towers fight, and lobby very hard for the location of the subway station in that building because of natural value increase. So it's social friction. It goes right down to the neighborhood, my own neighborhood, where people don't want the light rail line going through it because it's never there before. So these are sort of really sticky points that come up in the practicality of building these things. And if we can engage citizens to develop collectively, I would argue we can accelerate that development process a lot faster than if we keep doing what we do.
So a question out of that, how local improvement charges might be applied to these kinds of situations? Who wants to take that on? Robert? Can we pull him up? Robert, can you hear us? I don't think so. Robert, did you hear that question? Okay. Anyone else want to tackle it in the room? Were there other questions back there? We're getting past 8 now. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll wrap up. Okay, there have been lots of great comments and questions from just about everybody in the room, and of course our remote guests as well. I want to thank you for coming out tonight. It's been very interesting. I think that there's a lot of food for thought here, a lot of work to be done, obviously, to move it beyond this stage to real action. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the session. I don't know who wants to close off.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone in the audience as well, and especially Julie Ireton, who really did a fabulous job in guiding us through here, and I think some applause is needed. There's technical difficulties at times, but we figured it all out at the end, I think. A little bit longer, but yeah, very good skills at improvising and continuing without the jokes. It's actually sometimes better that way. Anyways, but I just wanted to conclude and not to say, okay, this was a great discussion, let's stay there. But I really hope that we continue this discussion. Also, I think some good points were raised that we can take somewhere. Susan Zielinski just talked about bringing sites together with similar agendas, for example, in the vicinity. And it's something, especially if we think about most of the people that are here have a reason also to be here because of regional issues that they're not quite agreeing with. So maybe, I don't know if we have done that at the same way and scale as in these other cities. So I'd like to know more about the process that could lead to bringing people with similar agendas and overlapping interests together and seeing some solutions coming out of that. It might be a promising route. The other thing I like to mention is there's some research necessary to look at the favorable condition or requirements from other cities that have led to change into more connectivity and mobility. And I think I don't know if that research has been done, but it would be good to see what is missing perhaps in certain areas that are not developing that way, and what does it take for the initial initiative? Is there a civil society initiative that's necessary, etc.? So let's think about this and think down the road of continuing this process.
Thank you very much. And as Stefan said, we definitely need to work. We academics would need to work on this. The initiative of many of our speakers here, actually the 4 speakers all have their different contributions to this issue. And it remains that I think one of the market failures we're talking about, or we're not mentioning yet, is the information market failure. Mr. Robert Dorion from Altus presented us with valuable charts, obviously, but specifically he explained to what extent it takes time to build those information assets and then to distribute them around. However, in our context, the problem is not so much just the information we need to perform the research, it's also this other way around, which is the information about needs and want and also will from the political side. And that market doesn't exist. In the Ottawa-Gatineau region, it doesn't exist. It's clear. This is a dislocated area. I would invite you almost to, I would plug a little item here that is mine. I'm starting a discussion online with a website, ottawagatineau.org, where I hope that this issue of metro transit will become one of the leading issues, hopefully. And eventually, we may have a better way of getting politicians involved and getting them to commit in some way or another to definitely share commitment to that market for information. And from that information, obviously, we can definitely make research that is binding, results that prove that indeed there is a cost-benefit analysis that demonstrates the value of a transit system with that model. So that's pretty much my perspective, and I would like to say thank you again for our speakers who have made a major effort in preparing their own work, but also getting together. It's been a bit of a difficult time because many of our speakers are actually way off in different continents right now. So I think, Sue, you're connecting from very far. So I will ask, by the way, we will have Véronique to close the discussion, but we would like to let you know that the Brasserie right down the road on Montcalm is open until pretty much 3 a.m. And you're invited, please, to join the team and share a pint. There is also at the Brasserie a very diversity of pints. I will let you figure it out. Thank you very much.